I have always been apprehensive about what happened in Kenya. I said that I was not going to talk about the 2022 elections until certain things had happened. Because what happened in Kenya was very sad indeed. The Kenyan people came out in large numbers on the 9th of August to exercise their democratic right of electing their leaders. In my view, that kind of right should be respected by everybody else. Nobody should try to interfere with the right of the people, their sovereign right to elect leadership of their choice. Unfortunately, what happened in Kenya was regrettable, particularly when it came to the presidential elections. There was a lot of manipulation of election results by the agency that had been appointed there to ensure free, fair, and transparent electoral process, the IEBC. We were shocked at how they handled themselves. But let me just say that the electoral process, in as far as the people voting at the polling station, the counting and announcing a result at the polling station, the tallying at the constituency center, and the transmission, they all went very well. There was no interference at those levels, and the results were declared in a very transparent way. The problem became with the transmission and tallying and announcement of the results at the National Tallying Center, which was purely for the presidential votes only. That's where the problem was. Where the problem was because a scheme had been orchestrated to basically undermine the will of the people. It is a process that started way back before the election day. Some people remember that a team of mercenaries was arrested at the airport when their baggage was x-rayed and revealed that they were carrying certain materials, particularly electoral materials, which had not been declared. And there was no official from the Electoral Commission to meet them at the airport. When asked, they said that they were going to meet somebody who is an agent of the IEBC. These items they were carrying were confiscated by the security agencies. And when analyzed, they found that these people had secret codes of IEBC and so on, that they could actually interfere with the electoral process. They could enter the IEBC system and compromise the results. What they had, there's a report which was compiled by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. These people were supposed to be charged in a court of law. But when the head of the intelligence convened a meeting, which included the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, the Electoral Commission chairman, the head of internal security, and so on, Mr. Chebukati actually gave a threat that if those people, Mr. Chebukati, the chairman of the IEBC, were not released, then elections would have to be postponed. And these were his agents. What was surprising is that their presence or their coming was not unknown by other members of the Electoral Commission. They were only reporting to the chairman of the Electoral Commission, these mercenaries. And then another investigation was carried out by IBC, which revealed that there were 19 other people who had come in from this same group that was working for this mathematical company, a company which had been employed to provide ICT services to the IBC. There were a total of 21 people, out of which 19 were foreigners. Other members of the Electoral Commission did not know of the presence of these other 19. Those 19 are people whose record from investigations showed that they are people with criminal records in ICT. They have committed cyber crimes. In other countries, they are being looked for, like in Sri Lanka, they were being looked for. So these were basically crooks who had been smuggled into the country by the IBC for purposes of compromising the electoral process. Come now the day of the elections. The elections were, Kenyans turned up in numbers to vote, and they exercised their right at the polling station. And the counting and tallying at the polling station was flawless. After that, the presiding officers went with the results to the constituency tallying center. Again, at that center, there were no problems. The tallying was done, and at the polling station, they came with the Form 34As, they called, for the presidential votes. At the constituency tallying center, then the returning officer now had what is called 34Bs for the presidential votes. So tallied. And each time this tallying was done, the form would be scanned and then would be transmitted to the server at the national level. Now, one assumed that those results were the ones which were being received by the Electoral Commission and which were going to be announced. What we have now discovered since that time is a different story. First, we discovered that there were 4 different servers. There's one server which was in the Netherlands, in the clouds. 2, there was another server in Venezuela. 3, there was another server in the anniversary towers, headquarters of the Electoral Commission. 4, there was another server in the industrial area. And 5th, there was a portal at the National Tallying Center at the Bomas of Kenya. So what would happen was that when these results were being transmitted from the polling station and even from the constituency tallying center, they were going to these 4 servers. But it was the server in Venezuela where it was manipulating the results, altering results, and transmitting to the portal which was at the National Tallying Center. That is where the crime was committed. So that the results which were at the National Tallying Center were differed to a very large extent from the results which had come from the constituency tallying center. So what was, therefore, what now happens is that you have the results which had come from the constituency tallying center and they were available in the server at the IBC headquarters in Anniversary Towers. At the tallying center, the Bomas of Kenya, our agents were suspicious with people who were walking around with gadgets and which were involved in altering results. And the attention of the chairman of the Electoral Commission was actually drawn to these facts. Now, the chairman of the Electoral Commission had said that he was not going to announce the presidential result outcome until he had received the originals of forms 34Bs from the returning officers to 290 constituencies, plus one which is for the diaspora, therefore 291, that he would only be able to complete Form 34C out of this sum total of 291 Form 34Bs. That is how when he was going to originate 34Cs. That's what he said. But then what happened was different. As you know, as the tallying was going on, the portal was live and the people were seeing on the television screen the results as being coming from constituencies. They were being announced and the people were showing it. So the figures kept on changing. However, 2 days before the end of the exercise, they stopped the portal. It was no longer showing anything. And then they were going through constituencies, but they were no longer being posted in the portal. Then now they reached a stage where there were 29 constituencies which still remained. The chairman stopped the exercise at that point. And then he said he was going to rest. He went to rest. He went away for 8 hours. He was completely incommunicado. When he returned after these 8 hours, he came and then called the commissioners and told them that he had the final results which he wanted to announce. They asked him, but when you left here, we had still 29 constituencies which had not been tallied. He said that his staff had already tallied all that, and he has now the final results which he want to announce. I told him, but we don't know how you've arrived at these results. And we have not even discussed this as a commission. He said, no, I'm the returning officer. I have the sole prerogative to announce the results, and I'm going to announce. At that which point now these other commissioners walked away, protesting, saying that they could not be party to a process that was opaque, that had not been party to. And then that's how they walked away, and they went and then addressed the press conference. Chebukati, of course, went then and made his own announcements. We were not satisfied. Our people were, of course, tantalized. But we said, look, follow the process of the law. So we'll go to the Supreme Court. And we went to the Supreme Court. But what happened in the Supreme Court was a charade. Because at the Supreme Court, our lawyers demanded access to the server so that they could be able to download information which is available in the server. In spite of our lawyers' repeated demand to the court, one of the judges there who was in charge of ICT kept on pushing the matter behind. Yes, Justice Lenaula. He knew exactly why he was doing it. And Smartmatic wrote a letter whose copy we have, saying that they cannot allow other people into the server because that would infringe on their proprietary rights. Now you ask yourself, this is a company which has been engaged by the government to provide ICT services to the Electoral Commission. And there's now a petition against the results which have been announced by the Electoral Commission being disputed by one of the parties involved. And this party is being denied access to the server where the records are. Now, how can you then be having a genuine case? How can you prosecute an effective case? The court did not see this as strange. The court did not see this as strange. That's why we have our doubts about the impartiality of that bench. Because then after that, of course, we provided sufficient evidence. Our lawyers, for example, gave an example of a live IBC server where they showed manipulation of results, showing even the signature of somebody, one Jose Camargo, Venezuelan, his signature in the document, and asking what was Jose Camargo doing with the electoral process. They showed that one of the KEMS kits, because KEMS kit was supposed to be distinct. Each KEMS kit had its own identification number and it could not be duplicated. But now I have a case where one KEMS kit was transmitting results from a polling station in Mount Elgon. And then within 8 minutes, it was transmitting the same one. It was transmitting results from a polling station in Nyeri, over 300 kilometers away. The question was, how did this happen? The court did not find this as strange at all. But the fact is that these results were being transmitted from one center in Venezuela. That's the fact that we have now established. Okay, so then the Supreme Court went and made this ruling, which of course we said we respect, but we disagreed with. And the language that they used in that judgment is awful. So we said, shame on the Supreme Court. But we said the truth will come out one day. This is not the first time that we went to the Supreme Court. You remember, we went to the Supreme Court in 2013. Then we went to the Supreme Court in 2017. In 2017, we had evidence, of course. And in 2017, the Supreme Court annulled the results and said that the chairman of the Electoral Commission himself was culpable. Now, the evidence that we had this time around was much more weightier than the evidence that we had in 2017. But we were shocked and consterned at the behavior of the Supreme Court this time round. We were really very shocked and surprised at what the Supreme Court did. It was basically a contempt against the will of the people of Kenya, which is very unfortunate indeed. But then, as they say that the ills that men do lives on to haunt them. Here we are now, an insider of one of the officials of IBC has had at least the courage to come forward and reveal what transpired within the IBC. I think this is something that needs to be encouraged very much. It is a shock I asked one of these diplomats in Kenya, I said, a situation we saw, the kind of circus we saw at IBC, where 4 commissioners are saying no, 3 commissioners are saying yes, and then you still say that that result is valid. Would this happen in Europe? They told me no. In Europe it would not be accepted. In fact, that country would be suspended from being a member of EU. But I said, but in Africa, it is okay. It is not okay in Europe, but in Africa, you can apply different standards. I'm saying as a proud African that Africa should not be judged by different standards. If this thing is not acceptable in Europe, it should also not be acceptable in Africa. And therefore I'm saying that the facts that are there shows that Mr. William Ruto did not win an election. He lost the elections. I won the elections. So he's there illegally as a president. And what we are going to demand is that Mr. Ruto should resign and let the Kenyans have their will. The people's will is the God's will. And in my view, that is what should happen. He says that he's a man of God. He respects righteousness. He respects the rule of law. So let him follow. Let him live up to what he has been professing. These elections were flawed. He did not win these elections. He lost them. And I am happy and I'm proud of the people of Kenya. I want to thank the people of Kenya for conducting themselves peacefully these elections. There are areas where they say that people did not vote for me, like in central Kenya. But these results have shown that the people of central Kenya voted for me overwhelmingly. So I want to thank them for their patriotic duty. What happened is not the mistake. Their will was subverted by agents of impunity at Bomas of Kenya. From the results which have come out from the whistleblower, who is an insider, it has shown very clearly how the people of Kenya spoke on that day. And it's shown that my challenger got 5.9 million votes against 8.1 million votes. There's a difference of 2.2 million votes, which cannot be challenged. And that's why I'm challenging Mr. Ruto to accept the will of the people of Kenya. Because otherwise it is going to be like an illegitimate government ruling the country. It's just like a civilian coup that has been orchestrated by the IBC and in connivance with Mr. Ruto himself. In my view, this is not right. The voice of the people or the voice of God. Vox populi, vox Dei. Now I've said that the people of Kenya expressed their will through these elections. Those who are resident in the country voted for me overwhelmingly. Secondly, the Kenyans who live in diaspora, in the United States, in Europe, in Africa, particularly in Southern Africa, turned up and voted. And the diaspora vote, although it was not as huge as would have been expected, but it was majority in my favor. So I want to thank them for turning up and voting for me in those elections. I want to thank them very much, and I tell them that their vote did not go in vain. When we form a government, we will definitely work together with them.